actually didn't expect to do one of these today because I assumed, like a lot of other people, that one or both of the McLarens would just go off into the distance. I mean, not quite like how Lando did at Zandvoort, but still, that was how I expected it to go. But, you know, you had some unpredictability, you had a different winner, and lots of other different things that happened that made it a decent race, so we might as well do a review. I was anticipating scraping the bottom of the barrel to say McLaren won, Red Bull was slow, something something botched upgrades, something something iffy brake pedal, something something something, or just not doing a video at all. But yesterday was a mixture of gambles, strategy, pace, teammates fighting, and a lot of other things that added up to be a decent event all round. And it had one main question. Did Ferrari win, or did McLaren chuck it away like they'd done at Silverstone? That's what I am to find out, and for you to have fun debating it in the comments, because that's why I do these videos. I mean, there's a little bit of engagement bait there as well. Part of the reason Monza provided a race like it did is because the track had been resurfaced and there are a few other upgrades as well, but the main key part here is that the track surface did things to the tyres that caught a few of the teams out. So what we're going to do now is look at them using some video game footage, because I can't exactly go to Monza and take the pictures myself, can I? One of the changes they made to the track was at the first chicane. They widened the central part of the chicane while keeping the entrance and exit the same. An exact reason for doing this I can't find, but it looks like that it's been done to allow for easier switchback moves or to just ease congestion in the starts, particularly when series like the WEC visit the circuit. You've got a lot of cars trying to go through that section and two classes of car involved too. But what's good about this is that the entry and the exit of the complex are the same. There's no wider entry, so it's all taken as it normally would be. Lando's pole lap shows him using the same line that he would have done last year, so it was actually quicker to do that than to try and really open up the second part of that chicane for the run through Curva Grande. The second properly noticeable change was nearer to the end of the lap at the Ascher chicane. What the circuit owners had done here is take out the old gutter style curbing on the right hander and install some flatter curbing on that corner, as well as flattening out the apex curb on the final left that spits you out onto the straight between Ascher and Parabolica. Sorry, Alboreto, before I get absolutely mullered by the correction, excuse me crowd. The reason that these curves were controversial is because of the thing that affects all racing drivers, in that if you're giving them an inch, they'll take a mile. Before this update, you had to stay off the curbs entirely, even in pre-ground effect cars. You certainly didn't touch that gutter curb, and you only hit the two apex curbs on the two left-handers if your car was set up well enough to be able to hit them. Eastbourne lines and so on. As I've mentioned in several videos now, the McLarens, Norris in particular, can attack curbs a lot better than the other front-running cars in the two Mercedes, the two Ferraris and one of the Red Bulls. Yeah, exactly. But the thinking was that these new flatter curves weren't so much to do with two cars taking the benefit of them, but more to do with the whole ruining the magic of that section, because you had to be laser guided through there. Other changes involved the removal of some of the extra runoff that was on some of the curbs, you know, that green stuff that was around them, and then bringing the gravel traps closer to those curbs so that the track limits were the track limits, as Colapinto found out in his first qualifying session, and he had a decent race, to be fair to him, and I thought I'd mention that because people will want to have me mention it, but really we're focusing on McLaren versus Ferrari here and what happened in the race. Also, Magnussen getting 12 penalty points on his licence, so that should be the first ban since Romain Grosjean in 2012, and that's a video I need to do in the future. But the main thing on top of these changes to the first chicane and these new curbs at Ascari, the whole track had been resurfaced. A brand new sheet of tarmac applied to the track, and because it was brand new, the tyres were going to react differently to how they would elsewhere, which would become a big talking point later on in the race. A race that McLaren managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory from again, you'd argue. Part of that was done at the start, Lando once again not getting the best of starts, with Piastri hounding him all the way towards the second chicane, and Piastri himself lucky to avoid a puncture when he cut across the front of Russell's Mercedes and damaged part of Russell's front wing. As the two McLarens flew down towards the second chicane, Piastri positioned himself on the outside and lobbed it in, with Norris getting a kick of oversteer and almost ending up like Vettel did in 2018. So Norris down from first to third as Leclerc went by on the exit of the Roggia. Piastri cut it a bit fine by going across Russell like that, but to be honest, what was he supposed to do? Stay in behind Lando and lose a position to George and or Charles behind? After that though, it's a debate over what he should have done. With George held back due to cutting the chicane, I reckon there was a gap available for Oscar to hold it into the Rogier, but that's just me. They were racing under what's become known as papaya rules, which basically translates to race each other but don't crash. Although someone did put it bluntly on a Reddit thread regarding this whole papaya rules thing, which does sound like it will become a forced meme at some point. Papaya rules is so stupid a notion to say after your teammate sends it in the middle of a chicane on lap 1, forcing you to take evasive action and turn an easy 1-2 into a 1-3 and compromising a WDC challenge that only Lando seems to care about. They need a overtake your teammate on the straights, you muppet, so they don't either have to lose positions avoiding you or crash into you racing normally rule. Lando should have stuck to the normal line and had a Silver Arrows-esque crash. Then the team will finally stop sitting on their cocks and do some team management. Anubis 1958, a 66-year-old with a lot of experience, said, "If Lando hadn't yielded, they would have both gone off. If Oscar had tried that with Max, there would be broken cars and a safety car. Oscar is capitalising on Lando being too nice. Lando needs to realise that to win the Drivers' Championship, he needs to be ruthless and race for himself." By lap 14, Oscar had a 3-second lead to Leclerc, who was following in second place, and then Lando was about half a second back from the Ferrari, give or take. But then, as the race went on and it got to around lap 10, lap 11, the problems with the new surface started to come about. Because the surface is brand new, it reacts differently. Piastri, while leading the race, was consistently a second faster than he'd been in second practice, but it was just a matter of time before things started to drop off. What the new surface was doing was it was giving the cars more grip, but at the same time it was going to give the tyres what's known as graining. So what's that then? To be honest, I don't know, so let's learn together. Formula 1 tyres, much like other racing tyres, have an optimal temperature window in which that they'll work properly, and this is why you see them weaving and doing other bits and pieces like speeding up and slamming on the brakes to generate the tyre temperature, either through the side-to-side weaving or also the heat of the brakes radiating through into the rims and then into the tyre. Unless it's that clip of Kimi driving in a straight line while everybody else is weaving like a snake. Martin Brundle has said on a few occasions that he doesn't think that any of that weaving stuff works and that it's all placebo. Graining happens when the surface of the tyre scrubs across the tarmac through a corner, and the way the car and physics do their thing means that the tyre is scrubbed across the tarmac and this pulls on the rubber. Bits of the rubber are pulled off as this happens, and because the surface of the tyre is now incredibly hot, the rubber sticks back onto another part of the tyre. And you can see some graining on these tyres from 2016. Those wavy lines just below the larger chunks of rubber are all part of the graining process, and the larger chunks might just be because of picking up marbles after the race. It's not actually clear. All this happens because the surface temperature is hotter than the carcass temperature, and grip will drop because of having an uneven contact patch. As the surface of the tyre gets thinner, you lose tyre temperature because of it being harder to retain the heat. As the carcass temperature comes up, things start to equalise out, and you get rid of the graining, or at least reduce it enough so you get better performance. Now blistering is the opposite. Blistering happens when the tyre is too hot at the carcass, and this causes the tyre's rubber to basically boil and have bubbles that blow up and destroy the rubber irreparably. This is the thing about graining over blistering: give it a few laps and you can usually get rid of it. The TLDR is the track had too much grip. So basically what happened was the tyres reacting on this particular surface caused the graining, and once the graining had started they couldn't get rid of it because they couldn't get the tyres back into the right window with which to get rid of it. I hope all of that makes sense. With Red Bull definitely having issues, Max taking another set of hards at his first pit stop, it was also clear that the McLarens would have to stop again. At the end of lap 16, Piastri stopped for a set of hards, and it was going to be a tall order to get him to the end, unless he found a way of getting through things. But Norris seemed to be getting it worse than Piastri, with McLaren giving him an extra bit of front wing to help with the turn-in, and in the second part of the race, Norris was lapping nearly half a second slower than Oscar was, while Leclerc sat quite happily in second. By the midpoint of the second stint, there was no choice for McLaren but to pit again. Piastri, if he wanted the win, was going to have to lap something like 2 seconds a lap faster than Charles was. And this is where Ferrari snatched the victory. A lot of people expected the Ferrari to drop off and for Oscar to catch back up, myself included, because of the way the tyres are working. But as the race noted, Leclerc did what Verstappen, Piastri and Norris couldn't do and managed to stabilise his graining, so his lap times remained somewhat consistent. While Piastri was able to clear Sainz into second, Leclerc was just too far ahead. Piastri was hampered by lapping Stroll's Aston, which didn't help, but it would have still been a tall order to get past. And for Ferrari to pull this off seems even better, considering that for so long they've been associated with a picture of a pit wall with Pepe the Frog in clown makeup superimposed over the heads of the people on that pit wall. Which leads to the poll I put up on Twitter yesterday. Was this a Ferrari masterstroke, or was it a case of, if you throw enough shit at the wall, eventually some of it's going to stick? Most people said that it was a great strategy call, but the general consensus is that McLaren managed to throw it away, much like they'd done at Silverstone. Ferrari did have some stuff going in its favour though. They had a new floor and a new rear wing, with the floor designed to help reverse some of the bouncing issues they've been having since the upgrades brought to the Spanish Grand Prix in May. The thing is, Monza isn't exactly a track where there's a lot of bouncing involved, so it probably won't be until Baku and beyond that any gains or losses will be seen with that floor. On top of this, the Monza circuit played into Ferrari's hands too, given that Monza has more slower speed corners that the Ferrari is good in and doesn't have as many long corners that the Ferrari struggles with. This might have also helped with the graining issues. Now, I'm not saying for a second that Ferrari only won because of this, or because of this, or because of this, or because of this, or because of this. Leclerc was still 4th on the grid for the Grand Prix. Getting ahead of both of the McLarens was going to be a tall order. The McLarens were still the fastest cars on that particular weekend, even though Norris said that the Ferrari was faster, but I'm going to press X to doubt on that. But still, Leclerc did some stuff that his own teammate couldn't do, which was manage the graining and manage to get to the end, and manage to keep things consistent enough that the gap was there to be able to keep Piastri behind come the end of the Grand Prix. So it was as much of the driver, and there was a lot of driver input, more than it was just car and track matching up. Oscar's overtake on Lando was brave and pulled off to perfection. It's something that Lando should really take note of and try to put into his own driving, because he doesn't seem to have that killer instinct that he needs if he wants to one day become champion. Sure, nice guys have become champions in the past. Stewart, Clark, Graham and Damon Hill, but look at how many people won it through being arseholes. Niki Lauda won a championship by telling Enzo Ferrari himself that the car sucked. They fixed it, he went on to be champion the following year. Schumacher and Senna were ruthless on track. Prost ruthless off it. If Lando wants to be serious about winning a championship, he needs to stop being so slow and cautious on lap 1. But McLaren should be looking into what's going on. The Drivers' Championship was a long shot to start with. It's an even longer shot now. The Constructors should be the absolute priority, with them hounding Verstappen and Red Bull as much as possible. But with the way that things have been going recently, there might need to be a chat or two, because while the Hungarian Grand Prix was an easy one too and that could be cleared up, this whole papaya rules thing might become a bigger problem down the line. And just as some extra bits and pieces, because what usually happens when I do these opinion videos is I'll write what I need to write, I'll record it, I'll edit it, and then I get ideas on extra things to put in for more context, opinions, and to expand on things and stuff like that. So remember the bit from Reddit earlier that said that Oscar is capitalising on Lando being too nice. Like mentioned, that's the exact same move Lewis pulled on Sebastian Vettel in 2018, and Seb sent himself around for the trouble. But that move was pulled off by two drivers who, at the time, had 8 championships between them. So there is the opportunity for Lewis to try that move and Seb to not crash into him because of the experience they have, even if Seb did make contact with Lewis and ended up being spun round. But Lewis would have known that Seb is a driver that he could have done that with. As that same Reddit poster alluded, doing that with a driver that has a yield or crash attitude, there is absolutely no way that move is on. And it's almost as if Oscar is saying to McLaren, intentionally or not, don't throw your weight behind this guy because I'm here too. But at the same time, what does McLaren want to do, or need to do? Because when was the last time they were this good? Nearly 18 years ago, when the two drivers were, let me check my notes, Hamilton and Alonso. And we all know how that went down. Okay, it's probably not going to go to those kinds of extremes. So is it McLaren reacting to a warning from history if you try to get in the way of that kind of thing? Or is it that they've forgotten what they have to do in this kind of situation? The last time they won a drivers and constructors double was 1998, and that was with Häkkinen as a clear number 1 and Coulthard as the clear number 2. There's no way that those two drivers are going to be kept happy. One of them is going to have to suck it up at some point. But I don't think that any of this papaya rules, graining, Lando not being great on the opening lap, Oscar doing this, Lando doing this, should take anything away from what Leclerc did yesterday. He made it work where so many others couldn't. He did a one-stop while everybody had to do two. He maintained a pace while everybody else is slowed down, and he managed to complete the set of winning his home Grand Prix and Ferrari's home Grand Prix in the same season, which should be a big morale booster for the next race and going towards next season. Provided that the floor upgrade has the desired effect, because you didn't really see it much at Monza, but you'll probably see it more at Baku, which is a bumpier track, and the problems experienced by Mercedes, McLaren and Haas there a couple of years ago should serve as a warning from history. So while the Tifosi can celebrate the win at Monza, I don't think they should get too excited yet. So then, a look at what happened at yesterday's Italian Grand Prix thing, and this has been my look back, opinion, analysis and reaction to that thing. If this thing has made you think things about the thing, then like this thing so I know I've done a good job. And for more things from this thing, hit the subscribe button thing and also ring the bell thing so you never miss out on anything that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever go out to the mad lads that support me at a more personal level on Patreon and allow for the ability to buy up official top quality images for use in these opinion videos. And if you do want to help contribute to that and any other expenses around here, then a link to Patreon is in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliate links and other bits and bobs you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks if you just want to do a one and done donation, and memberships if you want to do a Patreon alternative. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.